A resolution to Malaysia's political impasse could come tomorrow after the King consults his fellow rulers. Key members of political parties are shuttling around Kuala Lumpur, holding more discussions. And for more on this, we have Malaysia's political situation, Dr. Sophie Lemiere, CEO of political consulting firm SOCO, joining us live from Kuala Lumpur. Well, Dr. Sophie, with the recent developments, how tense has the political situation in Malaysia become?
Very tense. I think everybody's very tense and extremely tired, so I can only imagine how the big players are feeling right now. We don't know what's coming up, so this is pretty hard on everyone's nerves. It's the first time that Malaysia is facing this kind of situation. Obviously, the constitution allows it. It is the system, and it is still a democratic game. But it is nerve-wracking for most people because we just don't know how long it's going to take. We have a lot of U-turn being taken by leaders in coalition. We're seeing the collapse of some of the parties. So it is an extremely complex moment, but yet very interesting.
Definitely interesting. But how do you see this, impacting perhaps the country's socio-economic infrastructure?
Well, I think for the moment, even if it looks extremely dramatic, it is again a democratic exercise to take some time to form a government. So of course, we're going to see the ringgit, to the dollar have some fluctuation, but I don't foresee any major, dramatical economic recess because we are taking a few days to form a government. Again, this is a new exercise. It's something that never been done before. And I'm glad that, discussions are still ongoing, even if it looks very messy, and it is. But again, it's an exercise of democracy, and that is the most important.
Well, Dr. Sophie, the King apparently wants PH and PN to form a unity government. And is that something that will work, given that PN's stated rejection of this notion?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether it's going to happen. I think it's indeed a very wise decision. Then at least we don't have any of the voters who would be feeling that they are being marginalized and that their voice has not been heard during this election. I'm quite surprised and not that the PN coalition has refused to do so, since it was one of their major commitments to not ally with PH. I would really hope that they can come to the table and finally, discuss possibilities. I strongly think that, there are enough space in a unity government for PN to be able to have a very, good portfolio in which they could do very good work and try to push for their own interest in policy in the next term. And I think there is enough room as well for PH to, deploy the full range of reform that they wish to deploy. So maybe I'm a little bit idealistic. I hope I am actually. But I would really hope to see, finally the two big-headed leaders coming to terms and at least coming to the table to start to negotiate on what could be, a wise decision for the country.
Well, yesterday in a news conference, Mr. Anwar said there are no talks of a minority government as of yet. But do you think a minority government may be in the cards for Malaysia?
I think it would be difficult. I'm not saying it's not doable. It is constitutionally and legally, it is entirely doable. But that would be a weak government. We have seen in the past few years that most of the effort of politicians were directed towards toppling each other. So a minority government will be in a very vulnerable position to be democratically toppled if majority were to be reversed. We have elections coming up in UMNO as well. We could have a change of leadership. A change of leadership in UMNO could have also translate into a change of coalition and support and new friendship being created with whatever other coalition would be in the opposition. And that could reinforce the opposition power to topple the government of the day, even more so if that government is a minority government.
Well, political instability is something that Malaysia has been facing for quite some time. And analysts say that whichever coalition that takes reins will likely not usher in the stability that Malaysian voters have hoped for. What's your take on this?
Well, I think, again, if we're talking about a minority government, definitely would not be very stable. If we're talking about unity government, that would be the wisest, and that would be the more stable. Then whether it's PH on its own or PN on its own, we're still talking about minority government, unless they manage to indeed have the numbers that they have failed to have until now. If they do have the number, the problem that I see here is that a very large part of the voters would feel that they've been robbed of their election, which is a phenomenon that we've seen in the US. But in the US, that was a very different context, and it was a lot of fantasy. But we can see, like how people can develop resentment. We're in a country where there is a lot of resentment, political resentment, and social resentment on which politicians have been building their discourse and rhetoric. So I think that we're more in a time where politicians do have an opportunity to show that, Malaysia has reached this political maturity that would allow them to actually discuss and come to the table to form a unity government, as it has been done in a lot of older democracies in the West, and I think that would definitely be the only solution to have the stability that Malaysians have been longing for the past few years.
Well, thank you very much for your insights. That was Dr. Sophie Lemiere speaking to us live from Kuala Lumpur.